All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being a part of this panel. I'm so excited to talk about translating student innovation. And the name of this panel is from Fab to Fab, from fabrication to fabulous. And on the panel, the first thing that we'll do is we'll introduce ourselves, and then we'll go into kind of the meat of the subject matter. So why don't we go ahead and start? I'll start with myself. My name is Patience Luth. I am an associate teaching professor in the Department of Architecture, co-director of the Wearables Design Show, and the director of Design Studies 102.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Edwards. I'm an associate teaching professor from the Department of Art and Visual Culture, and I am the co-director along with Patience for the Wearables Design Show.
Hi, everyone. I'm May Murphy. I am a student here at Iowa State. I am a fourth-year architecture student with a minor in Women and Gender Studies. I have been a peer mentor for Design 102 several times, and I was also a part of the first two Wearables shows.
I'll go ahead and go next. My name is Lillian Juma. I'm a third-year architecture student. I'm currently a peer mentor for 102, and I was part of the first Wearable Design Showcase.
And I am Luke McDonald. I'm a fourth-year architecture student here at Iowa State. I also have peer mentored for 102 and participated in the first 2 years in terms of planning and helping out with the Wearables show.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's really good to have you all here. And the main thing that we're celebrating this week is innovation. And so the first question that I have for all of us is, what is innovation? Some of these images that you see here are 102 student work. Some of them are photographs. We're going to be showing some videos that relate to the topic. And so, yeah, so what is innovation? Maybe Luke, do you want to take this one on?
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that. So I think innovation, especially at the college level or at the 102 level, is really just about kind of the process and way students work. So I think 102 really teaches students to continually rework and revisit the techniques, materials, fabrication processes, what they're learning in their studio. It's not necessarily just about doing something new, but more about that process of work.
What are your thoughts, Lillian? I mean, you were, and hopefully we're going to see a video of you soon, but you were part of a group who designed wearables. So what do you think about that, especially in with regard to wearables?
Yeah, I think that innovation is a lot about taking like pre-existing like concepts and ideas and trying to figure out newer ways to apply them. So for us, that kind of came up with materiality. So it was looking at things like paper clips and seeing like, can they be something more than paper clips? And that's kind of how we approached it.
Well, and by the way, right, so I think I neglected to introduce us to Design Studies 102. Design Studies 102 is a first-year course here in the College of Design at Iowa State University. And we go through a series of projects, and almost 500 students, maybe 480 somewhere there, who are wanting to get into various programs in their second year. So this first year prepares them. It's their foundation year. And Design Studies 102 is one of the studios, one of the courses that are required for these students. So just wanted to kind of throw that out there. Okay, May, innovation.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with definitely what Luke and Lily were talking about and how it's really about pushing materiality. I also just wanted to add that I think it's really like innovation is about pushing those boundaries with the resources that you have. And so like putting the time and the research and the concept into different projects and really pushing it and kind of iterating as much as possible is really important.
Cool, thanks for that. Nathan, do you have anything to say? or have they said it all?
Well, I think everything everyone is saying, I totally agree with. And just thinking of 102, Design Studies 102, that it's a big sandbox. And all of these ideas of how we're interpreting innovation, I think, feed into the spirit of 102, the spirit of the College of Design, and also what we're going to talk about today, the Wearables Design Show.
Yeah, cool. So this is really a good segue, right? To begin to talk about what wearables is and what that show may be. And so the question is, what is wearables? And so Nathan, I'll have you start off talking about this, and as Nathan's talking, I'll just be playing the show from last year. So yeah, go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah, so this is difficult to pinpoint because several instructors teach Design Studies 102. And with the introduction of this project, we all are working from a handout that we are interpreting and defining as we work with students over a period of several weeks. To say what is a wearable, I think the general public might first think it's fashion, it's a fashion show, but we are working with students in a way trying to get them to think about design, thinking about this transition from 2D to 3D and how we might do that, how we might bridge our interpretation of what a wearable is using the elements and principles of design, and specifically thinking about the principles like rhythm, hierarchy, emphasis, contrast. How are these foundational building blocks to help us generate concepts, ideas to problem solve, and ultimately kind of stepping back, it's a wearable design. And so as you are experiencing this project as a student, you have particular objectives, and the students that you see on the screen here walking on the runway, they're working in teams, designing something that is coming from something. What is the design? The design is being influenced by the analysis of music. And that is one of our catalysts in the way that students develop a wearable design, right? Of course, this project may evolve over time, but right now, the essence is evolving from sound, from music. Wearable music.
Wearable music. Yeah, thank you for that explanation. And Lillian, as you saw, I'm gonna replay you, because your team actually won an award, the best in show at the time. Your team's wearable is called Nubian Redemption. What was your experience with this? Kind of the process.
Yeah, so for us, we were 102 students. Like up until then, we were very used to doing work in design in 2D in very stagnant forms. And so it was and we were used to like working alone. So like the wearable show was really cool because it was the first time we're collaborating with each other. And it's like the first time we're seeing design as something that's heavily influenced by its environment. And our canvas is like shifting because it's like the human body. So a bunch of like different problem solving had to be done in order to like be able to fit it on a person and to be able to present it as well, trying to present our narrative in the short span of time that we had. So it was a really cool and interesting introduction to what we were going to do later in our College of Design career. So that was really the biggest thing I got out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And as I don't know if any of you noticed, but in one of the views here, Luke was in the background taking photographs, and Luke and May were both volunteers. They were peer mentors, I believe at the time, right? And so Luke, you were a photographer. May, you were a stage manager, like you were the lead stage manager. Luke, tell us about your photography experience in terms of wearables.
Yeah, so I helped photograph on the day of. So we both photographed them walking down the runway here, and we also photographed them behind scenes right as they came off of the stage. And I think it was really important to do that because documentation is very important for design. And so students documented their process throughout the actual project, but it was hard for them to say document the final result. So we were there to assist them in that part and be able to have that material. And I really enjoyed, I did photographs with 2 other people for the day and really enjoyed getting to see all the work. I peer mentored and was actually peer mentored for Lillian's class. So I got to see her project go all the way through, which was really amazing. So yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool. And as I think about what went on behind the stage, you see people coming from back, behind there. May, tell us what was going on. Because no, I don't think anybody knows what was happening back there.
Yeah, that's a good question for sure. So I was the stage manager for this show, and it was kind of the first time that it had been put on. And so this position was really one where I was kind of doing kind of the back end organizing part of the show. And so I was the one kind of standing behind those kind of large silver installations. I was telling students when to go on stage and kind of like instructing, how to exit. And so I really saw like that energy like before students got on stage. And it was super exciting to see, like the nerves and everything beforehand, and then to also see them walk off the stage as well too. It took a lot of coordination, to get the system going. And I think like as a student, this wearable show was a really great opportunity for me to kind of learn some of those organization coordination skills. And it kind of gave me, some confidence to know how to direct students, and also to really see the behind the scenes for such an amazing show.
Well, thank you. And I really can't thank you all enough for, for being kind of key people who made the show what it was. And I know, Nathan, you would have a lot to say also about what happened, but we are going to move on to this idea of materiality, right? Nathan, you were really, kind of helped set that all up and in terms of the stage, but Nathan, you also teach in Design Studies 102, and you've seen students in terms of what they do from the beginning till the end. Tell us a little bit about how you talk to students about what materiality, fabrication, and iteration are.
Yeah, well, for myself being a mixed media artist, I really try to communicate to my own students this relationship of the maker, and the materiality, the material. So this materiality is this relationship of understanding the potential and the limits of materials. And when you're evolving concepts within the wearable project, we start somewhere and it evolves into different avenues. Every single student, every single team has a different type of representation. Yeah, we start with music, but then it doesn't necessarily focus only on that. And maybe how does the materiality also help to express the evolving concept? And that comes into play with fabrication as well. So what I love about this experience is that students are challenging the way they think about materials. Really, we try to get students to work past the first idea. I think that's what we hope that artists and designers will be able to, or our students will, as they blossom into artists and designers, is to understand the importance of iteration, of prototype design, of the play, the willingness to play, to try things out, to fail, to learn from the failure, to question why and how something is working and what they can do differently. And this sparks all this type of curiosity. I think that really is what defines the creative process of an artist and designer, is that curiosity, that willingness to explore. And I've forgotten the original question as I've gone down my description. I think it's about materiality, fabrication, iteration. You can see I'm getting excited just talking about this sort of thing. And I really hope that that carries over to students, that they're able to not just do work, but that they get to do work, that they get to be a part of this.
Yeah, that's for me, that's really interesting. But I do want to hear from Lillian because, if you all look at these pictures, you can see a few images of what was going on actually this year. So this is from the fall 20 and the spring and this semester, spring of 21. And Lillian, what was your wearable made out of? How did you all decide? I know you talked a little bit about paper clips, but what else did you use, or how many times did you redo something in terms of iteration?
Oh, wow. So with the paper clips, they were like the main chess piece, but I remade it like with my team like 3 times to make it like look a little more abstract and to also make it more secure whenever we were wearing it. And then there was also used chipboard that somebody found that was laser cut. And then there was, we had like this gold neck piece, and that was all like HVAC, not HVAC, some type of plumbing piping. And then it was like held together with, I think, fish, whatever those like stretchy plumbing, like, I don't know what it is, but it's like this toy basically. It's not necessarily like a refined material. And like we also had beads, and then we had fabric, and then we had the cape. So, and it was all held up together differently. And we even had like fishing wire holding up the back piece of the chipboard while I walked, and that was connected to my hair. So it was just a bunch of different methods that we used to like problem solve. Like, so how do we get this wearable to actually be able to be worn? And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. One thing though, and you all can ask questions as well to Lillian, because I think the story behind your wearable is quite amazing, right? Can you just really briefly tell us what that narrative was? What kind of spurred on this design?
Oh yeah, so our studio divided up song choices by culture and genre kind of. And so our genre was African music, and one of my teammates was from North Sudan, and so there was currently a revolution going on, and so there was like a lot of oppression and like a bunch of calls for human rights. So our wearable was like a mixture of regal and also ensnaring, not very fun, like a barbed wire look, kind of showing the current situation in Sudan and other parts of Africa. And so that's kind of what we built our narrative off of. So we didn't want it to necessarily look too much like a regal a model, but we also didn't want it to look like a completely like depressing lost hope, because the whole color scheme was supposed to represent like there was still hope and there was still something to look forward to, and there was still a future in that area. So yeah, it was just like a bunch of different things coming together, but that was like the basis of our narrative and why we did what we did, and why like when I was modeling, I tried to like showcase like chains and like emphasize like this is going on, but like people are still trying to like break free at the same time. So
I know you
I
didn't
hope
want
that.
it to look regal, but it looked quite regal. So, and so, when we talk about this narrative, I think that's really interesting because narrative and materiality might have a connection. Luke or May, would you like to maybe address that? Like, how do you translate a concept? How do you translate narrative into materiality or into fabrication?
Yeah, I think like there's another like bigger question as well, is like translating this kind of auditory observations and music into kind of like this 3D form as well. And so I think like that music is really where that narrative starts, and like what Lillian was talking about with kind of the origins of their music as well. And so I think like the challenge for students is really kind of understanding what the music is conveying, and then using color, using materials, using form to really represent that kind of sound in something around the human form.
Cool. Speaking of challenges, right? Speaking of challenges, we have been in a semester or a year of such challenge, and a lot of us have been online, both instructors, both professors and students. How do we deal with this, right? So we do have the challenge of fabrication and translating ideas, and but how do we, in this culture that we are in now, which is, I would call an online studio culture. Some schools had already been using online studios, but a lot of design schools, art and design schools, had not. It's been in-person. Studio is a one-on-one, in-person, face-to-face thing. What has been your experience? Luke, can you talk about this?
Yeah, so I think it has been quite a shift, especially for design students. Like you're saying, we are used to being in a studio environment, being very collaborative and being hands-on. And that goes back to talking about material and fabrication and iteration. And so I think students have had to adapt their workflows and how they collaborate. I mean, you have the screenshot there of Miro up there, and that's, a way to not recreate, but kind of to gather some of those same emotions and feelings of a studio culture where you can see what people are working on and work off of each other and get that energy, feedback, and inspiration.
Yeah, I just remember, Nathan and I were working on this last show, and we are online, or we're on the phone, or we are on WebEx, and we are annotating, right? And here are some of the screenshots of that as well. So this is something that I feel like maybe we can continue, or maybe not. Nathan, how do you keep students engaged, in this kind of online studio culture?
Well, I was definitely fortunate to have a hybrid in-person class. I've found different strategies of how to approach. I talk a lot in my studio. I love to lecture on particular topics, but I've also needed to find this kind of balance. And there's this kind of precious time that students have, because I've found that a lot of these students, this in-person experience is their only in-person class. And so how does that impact the way they approach the project? That in-person time to spend as a work day, to how do we do pinups? How do we make progress? How do we find a beneficial experience? And I found that the challenges that have presented, how the pandemic has presented challenges to me as an instructor, as well as observing how it's impacted my students, I think that we have found something that has made it a dynamic and worthwhile experience. What that exactly is probably going to take some time to break down and to examine, and to really understand how. But I think the spirit of the projects, and what we get to do keeps that dynamic, keeps that alive. And the work that students are producing, these first year design students, they just keep blowing me out of the water with the amazing stuff that they're doing. I'm just baffled, and I think that for me as an instructor, and I'm sure Patience, you can also agree, is that yeah, it's a challenge from time to time, whether we're teaching online or in the classroom, but to see the outcome of what students are doing has made it all worthwhile through whatever struggles, burdens, obstacles have presented themselves. We worked through it, especially the way we've problem solved in planning, reimagining how does the Wearable Design Show survive during a pandemic if we can't all be in person together?
That's a great question. And I don't know about, okay, so May, your experience in an online studio. I know you didn't peer mentor this semester, right? Or last semester, but what has been your experience in, how can we sustain that engagement? The engagement that Nathan is talking about.
Yeah, I think that working virtually does open a lot of windows in terms of, connecting with people who aren't here in Ames with us. There's a lot more opportunities to, host meetings such as ones that we're doing today with people from, potentially all over the world. And so, like, because we're so familiar with this platform now, it really does allow us to connect more with people in other places. That would be one thing that we could potentially transfer over as we navigate this pandemic.
Yeah, and you know, so on the bottom left there, we have a talk that we had with Banaz Farahi, and her talk was called Emotive Design from Architecture to Fashion, and just really cool stuff. But I don't know if we'd get the opportunity to have that many viewers or to kind of reach the span that we reached. We had people in Wisconsin, we had, you know, kind of people throughout the nation watching this particular discourse, which was meant for Design Studies 102 students, like at the first year level. So having these discourses, having these conversations, having lectures and invited guests, you know, that we may have not have been able to have in person, we're now able to do that. I think that's, I don't know, I think that's really a true benefit of having an online culture, but also in terms of studio culture, right? And seeing how people around the world, professionals around the world apply what they also have been learning in their particular studios. So I think that's, I don't know, that's just one advantage. There's several advantages that I'm telling you, we can keep on going on and on. But also speaking of engagement, right? We have various kinds of engagement. Of course, the engagement in the studio, but also there's the engagement of the community. And this has been somewhat of a challenge. You know, we're used to going maybe on field trips, and if we deal with research in our studios, we go out and talk to people. Have we been able to handle that in a time like this? You know, I don't know if any of you have been engaged in that way in the community. Have any of you been engaged at all? Are we all, we're all just gonna be quiet, huh? Go ahead, Nathan. Did you want to say something?
Well, of course, you know, I did a workshop.
Yes, you did.
We, of course, started a little while ago working with two volunteer students. We had some technical difficulties, but we adapt to the situation. I got a chance to step in and remodify and kind of show off some of the things that really it's really a window into how I approach my own students when it comes to materiality. And so this workshop, we are taking the viewer through a design process to evolve and to experience and to expand your creative potential. So if you're curious about how we roll within Design Studies 102, the workshop I'm speaking about, wearing design principles, really kind of looks into the nature of the design studio within Design Studies 102. So
yeah, that's really cool. And you know, this speaks of, so some of the images here that I'm showing are from a previous workshop. Luke, remember how we were talking before the pandemic? It was like, we're going to go to the high school and do these workshops. And so this is from the previous year where we actually did workshops and were able to go in person to Ames High School and engage with students in that way. Maybe even a better question would be, how can we do that in this day and age, right? How can we do that during a pandemic? And I think we've previously talked about it with the online studio culture, you know, kind of being a guest or getting people to be guests with alongside us, you know, even presenting these workshops. So when we talk about charrette and kind of this idea and quick generation of ideas along with the community, I think it's really a high possibility. And one way we actually did that was with Lindsay Weedy, who is one of the, and shout out to her, right? But she's one of the art teachers at Ames High School, and she was a judge, you know, last semester. So she had access to lookbooks and she had access to, you know, some of the students' work. And so she was able to help us judging even online. And so I think, and then another way, but this is a couple of years ago, we did have a high schooler who was a judge with the Wearables Design Show, but now is a student in Design Studies 102, which is pretty cool. So when we speak of student engagement with the community, this really helps also in terms of when we talk about recruitment, retention, you know, at the university level, I think these things kind of have a domino effect, and for the positive, right? This kind of leads us into this idea of civic and social sustainability, right? What is that? And I don't know if you all have heard that in various conversations at all. And in terms of what civic so sustainability is. So of course we have sustainability when we talk about it being green and so on. But when we talk about social sustainability, it's about the community and bringing community together and so on, and how we work together to sustain a society. And I think the value of design is truly shown in some of the things we do. You know what? We don't have that much time left, so I'm going to kind of keep us going here. But I do maybe want to hear from Luke or Lillian how you think in this pandemic, have we addressed social sustainability? Have we addressed this idea of community and how we work together as community? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can go ahead and take that. And so I think what the pandemic has really made people think about is kind of what communities they belong to. We've all of a sudden been prevented from traveling and we're all supposed to stay in one place. We have to decide who we communicate with, who's in our bubble. And so we think about what are the local communities that we belong to? What are the larger national and international communities that people belong to? And so then when you think about how do you give back to those communities or how do you participate in those communities, that's important because a lot of people have seen and had new necessities in their daily lives with the pandemic. And so who do you rely on? Who do you help out? And so I think Iowa State and especially the College of Design and Wearables particularly does a job of reaching out to the community and asking people to be a part of it, like having them on judges, and then also is a part of those communities because you guys went to the library and displayed the wearables. And so there's this give and take and participation between the two.
Awesome. Yeah, and you know, that actually is the next thing that we are going to be showing is this idea of display. Exhibit. What is the importance of exhibit in the community, right? What is the importance of exhibit to designers, to artists, to designers? Nathan? You're on mute.
Yes, I am. Now I'm flustered. Can you, okay, so restate the question for me one more time.
The importance of exhibit, within our communities and outside of our
Exactly. Well, I would say that what's the main thing? What's the point of exhibiting work? It's to be exposed, to see, to experience. And I think that's where it starts to trigger, it starts to blossom, it starts to engage people in a way that is approachable, perhaps, depending on the setting, especially if it's displayed in the library, displayed in a public space within a building on campus. But it's doing something, it's evoking, it's inviting, it's changing, at least questioning, what is this? What is this thing I'm looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really cool because, you know, to me, this really also speaks of what design can do. I mean, of course, we want everybody to understand the value of design, but also this idea of equity, you know, through design, which is a humongous topic. Oh my gosh, I wish we had more time to talk about this. But for Design Studies 102, we kind of see that in terms of resources, giving students access to our resources, all students access to resources, but also giving community access to knowledge. And so for example, having, you know, giving students access to photography equipment or documentation, exhibit space. But if you see that kind of center video, which I'm not going to play right now, it's a workshop and you'll find it on the Ignite page. You know, Nathan Edwards led us in a workshop dealing with design principles and wearables, right? So it's called Wearing Design Principles. So if you want to go check that out, that would be amazing. But again, how do we share knowledge, because that also has to do with equity, and we're hoping that this particular workshop, for example, is made available to everybody, including the high schoolers and those in our community who want to know how to make a wearable and want to know more about design principles. I think the last thing that we are going to address before we leave is this idea of interdisciplinarity. And then I'm just gonna like close us off. But what has been your experience with interdisciplinarity? This is for Lillian or May.
So I'm peer mentor now with a student who's in graphic design. And so just hearing her perspective on things, as well as my perspective on things in architecture, and seeing how we can both bring both of our knowledge to the students has been a pretty cool way that I've witnessed interdisciplinary in action. And also with the wearable set design for this semester, it was a bunch of people that were part of the ISU fashion show and weren't necessarily College of Design majors, but they were also very pivotal in like the whole process of creating the set. So that was really cool to experience.
Yeah, that's really cool. May, is there anything you want to say about that as well?
Yeah, I think that the core program in design is really great because it's a way for all of the design students to kind of to take classes together. And so necessarily, you know, you're with someone who's interested in graphic design, industrial design, architecture, integrated studio arts, like all of the kind of majors. And so you're able to meet friends, make connections that way, and then also use your own interests and skills in this kind of teamwork project. And that's really where the interdisciplinary starts to come in. Another thing that's also great is like just working on a part of the kind of student organization part of Wearables was being with students who weren't even in design. So we had a vice president who was a part of the business program, Lauren. She was awesome in like kind of bringing her skills of management and organization that really helped us kind of bring that interdisciplinary values to the table.
Awesome. And, you know, hopefully we can really continue that culture that we've started. We work, again, with so many people to help make the Wearables Design Show amazing. We can think about the future of wearables and innovation. Where is that taking us? There's going to be more to come. You all will be seeing more about it. And some of these images are student designers. And this is where also social sustainability and interdisciplinarity come to play, because we have so many facets and so many students working behind the scenes. So there'll be more to come on that. So I just want to really just thank you all, the panelists, yay, Nathan Edwards, Lillian Juma, May Murphy, Luke McDonald, and our support staff, Rachel Moylan, photographers. Some of these photographs I got from Isaiah Tilton and Nathan Edwards. So thank you for that. If you want to stay connected with us on Instagram at Wearables at IA State, and you can see our Facebook page for 102 there as well, please do. This is the end of our panel discussion. And so thank you all. And we hope you'll be visiting with us soon. And I hope to see you all soon as well. So good to talk to you.